and the fact that Schiff hasn't blinked since 1992. And he didn't take the news so well. The disgraced Democrat went on TikTok to complain. Behold.
Hello, I'm Congressman Adam Schiff with some troubling news. Today, Kevin McCarthy removed me from the House Intelligence Committee, all for doing my job, for holding Trump accountable and standing up to the extreme MAGA Republicans.
Schiff, given the ongoing political tensions and Trump's actions toward his critics, do you think President Biden's preemptive pardons turned out to be more important than initially expected? Let's first tell people what that means, preemptive pardons. That was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
It was the kind of television moment that stops you mid-sip of coffee. Two high-profile commentators sat across from a well-known political figure, and instead of the usual polite back and forth, they went straight for the jugular. The target? Adam Schiff. For years, Schiff had positioned himself as the man who would finally bring down Donald Trump over alleged Russian collusion. Night after night, he appeared on TV, speaking with the confidence of someone holding a winning lottery ticket. But when all the dust settled, the ticket turned out to be blank, no real evidence, no smoking gun, nothing to show for years of relentless accusations. And this time, the pushback wasn't coming from political opponents on the right, it was happening in real time, right there in front of a live audience. One moment Schiff was answering questions, the next he was being dismantled point by point. They accused him of selling a story to the American public, keeping the narrative alive not because of the facts, but because it kept him in the spotlight. Watching it unfold felt less like an interview and more like a public unmasking. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now, let's continue. This wasn't just about one man's political miscalculation, it was about a figure who built an entire persona on being the fearless investigator.
About Trump, we talk about him too much. We want to tell people what we're going to do for them. Healthcare, environment, those kind of issues. For example, I've seen you on TV a lot in the last couple of years. I know everything you know, or that you tell us, about the Russian situation. I don't have a clue what you think about healthcare. I've never heard it. I don't know whether you're for Medicare for all or improve Obamacare or get a chicken. I don't know.
Only for that image to collapse under the weight of zero proof. And in that studio, every crack in that image was being exposed. The takedown didn't stop there. The conversation shifted to something far more damning, how Schiff spent his time while the country faced some of its most urgent crises. Instead of focusing on issues like healthcare reform, environmental policy, or any concrete plan that would directly impact Americans, he was fixated on keeping the Trump drama alive. They pointed out that during the crucial early days of COVID-19, when the virus was quietly spreading, Schiff's energy was locked on impeachment hearings. It wasn't just a casual observation. They painted a vivid picture. While doctors, scientists, and everyday people were trying to brace for a looming health emergency, the halls of Congress were echoing with political theater. Schiff wasn't pushing pandemic preparedness or rallying resources, he was orchestrating another act in the Trump impeachment saga. It was a missed opportunity that could have changed how America responded in those critical early months. One of the commentators even drove the point home with biting sarcasm, saying that they knew exactly where Schiff stood on Russia, but had no clue what he thought about healthcare, Medicare, or any real domestic priority.
Because he created 3 years of a massive fallacy that did so much damage to this country and made us miss probably one of the most important stories of our lifetime. We were having hearings on impeachment while the coronavirus was exploding.
And that was the larger issue. He wasn't seen as a lawmaker with solutions, but as a political showman addicted to one storyline. The implication was clear. While the country needed leaders to lead, Schiff was more interested in keeping the cameras rolling on his favorite plot. Then came the moment that felt like a punch in the gut for Schiff's image. In the middle of the exchange, one of them leaned in and dropped a question that didn't just seek an answer, it passed judgment. What exactly have you done for America? It wasn't delivered with a smile or wrapped in polite language. It was blunt, almost surgical. The room went still, and Schiff's carefully polished demeanor didn't quite shield him from the weight of that question. The audience could feel it. This wasn't a debate point. This was an indictment of his entire career. From there, Greg Gutfeld took over with a different kind of precision, less about subtle jabs and more about tearing down the very foundation of Schiff's credibility. He didn't just focus on the Trump era, but also tied Schiff's political choices to the chaos and uncertainty of the COVID-19 period. He argued that Schiff's obsessive focus on impeachment wasn't just a distraction, it actively kept the nation from confronting one of the most important public health crises in modern history.
On impeachment, while the coronavirus was exploding, we talked about that virus in green rooms, but we had to do this impeachment story. We had to show these hearings. It's all on him, man. He's got to go. They got to investigate him. They got to hold him accountable. I'm not going to say he should go to prison, but my evil twin will say he should go away to prison for a very long time.
The criticism was relentless. They framed Schiff as a man who could have used his platform to prepare America, but instead chose to keep playing the same political record over and over. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, it made him look less like a principled leader and more like a performer unwilling to leave the stage. The dismantling grew even sharper when they turned to Schiff's habit of selective outrage. They brought up a specific case, a judge who had been arrested for helping an illegal immigrant evade ICE. It was a story that could have sparked outrage from anyone claiming to stand for law and order. But Schiff? Nothing. No speech, no press conference, no fiery statements, just silence. That silence was the point. They argued that if the same incident had even remotely tied back to Russia, Schiff would have been on every network within hours, armed with binders, sound bites, and dramatic warnings. But because it didn't fit his preferred narrative, he acted like it didn't exist.
And the irony is superb. He went crying to mommy on an app run by Chinese commies. Congressman Adam Schiff announced this morning he's running for U.S. Senate in California, which is guaranteed to boost U-Haul rentals headed for Texas. He unveiled the highly polished and produced political ad right on the heels of getting booted from the House Intel Committee. Coincidence? I think not.
This double standard was laid bare for the audience. Schiff didn't chase truth, he chased headlines that fit his story. They accused him of treating national issues like a menu, picking the ones that would get the most media play and ignoring the rest. It wasn't about consistent principles, it was about keeping himself relevant. By the time they finished, Schiff's image as a crusader for justice had been stripped down to something far less noble, a calculated operator who only fights battles that serve his own brand. And in that moment, it became harder for viewers to see him as anything else. From there, the focus shifted to Schiff's big announcement, his run for the U.S. Senate in California. The timing was almost too perfect. Just days after being removed from the House Intelligence Committee, Schiff released a slick, highly produced campaign ad. To his critics, it didn't look like a coincidence at all. It looked like a move straight out of a political playbook, turn a loss into a spotlight opportunity. They mocked it as the launch of The Adam Schiff Show, Senate Edition, warning that if voters gave him that seat, they'd be signing up for the same brand of political theater he'd perfected in the House. Instead of a leader tackling real issues, they'd get a career showman with an endless appetite for the camera. And they didn't stop there. They pointed out that Schiff's reputation wasn't exactly the kind that inspired confidence. Years of pushing collusion theories that collapsed under scrutiny had left a mark, and not the kind you brag about on a campaign trail. California, they argued, deserved more than a politician who had built his career on chasing headlines. The message was clear. Schiff wasn't reinventing himself for the Senate, he was repackaging the same act. And this time, the critics were determined to warn voters before the curtain went up.
An article last year, and it was called Separating Sports by Doesn't Make Sense.
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating by sports makes perfect sense.
Then the conversation dove into something even more charged, Schiff's alignment with the woke wing of his party. They recalled a moment when he was asked about one of the most divisive cultural debates in the country. Should trans women compete in women's sports? Instead of giving a clear yes or no, Schiff slipped into what they called politician gymnastics. He didn't plant his feet and give a firm stance. Instead, he danced around the question with polished, prepackaged phrases that avoided offending anyone while revealing nothing. To his critics, it was a perfect example of how he operates, never fully committing, always playing it safe, and keeping his answers so vague that nobody can pin him down. The problem, they argued, is that California voters are starting to tire of that kind of political choreography. People are looking for clarity, not carefully crafted dodge and weave routines. They want leaders willing to say what they actually believe, even if it risks backlash. And in that moment, Schiff's sidestep was more than just an awkward answer. It was proof, in their eyes, that he wasn't built for authentic leadership. The kind of calculated smoothness that once helped him navigate political waters was now making him look out of touch in a state where voters are demanding plain-spoken honesty. Greg Gutfeld then took the opening and delivered what felt like a precision strike on Schiff's Senate ambitions.
Their dentures when Schiff finally gets censored. And so the House condemns the lies of the man with the zombie eyes. Last night, the House voted on party lines to censure Adam Schiff for promoting the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, which was as believable as Brian Kilmeade getting fan mail. 2 for 2. Schiff becomes only the 26th member ever to be censured, but to his credit, he's still the only member to have a 12.
He didn't waste time on playful insults. This was a methodical teardown. He argued that Schiff's campaign wasn't about bringing fresh ideas or bold solutions to California. It was nothing more than a glossy brochure selling the same tired political product he'd been pushing for years. He compared Schiff's platform to a repackaged rerun, different setting, same storyline. No new vision for fixing inflation, no clear plan for immigration reform, no concrete proposals for strengthening national security. Just the same polished speeches and empty promises that had defined his career. The real sting came when Gutfeld painted Schiff as a man whose political value was all performance and no delivery. The voters, he said, deserved better than a career politician chasing applause lines instead of results. And in a rare moment of agreement, the audience seemed to feel it too. This wasn't just a roast, it was a public unmasking. For anyone watching, it became harder to see Schiff's Senate run as a fresh chapter. It looked more like an extended season of the same political drama, with the same lead actor reading from the same script. The criticism then zeroed in on Schiff's record, or rather, the lack of it. They asked the question many politicians dread. What had he actually accomplished in office? Where were the landmark bills he had authored? Where were the bold policies that improved people's lives? The answer, they argued, was silence. Schiff's career highlight reel wasn't full of solutions. It was packed with press conferences, sound bites, and grandstanding. Instead of passing meaningful legislation, he had spent years feeding the media with half-baked bombshells designed to keep his name trending. One of them made it crystal clear. America doesn't need more spotlight addicts obsessed with their next TV appearance. It needs leaders willing to do the hard, thankless work of actually governing. Schiff, in their view, was the exact opposite, a man whose main contribution was adding more noise to an already chaotic political climate. By framing him this way, they weren't just questioning his past, they were warning voters about his future. If this was the track record he brought to the Senate, Californians could expect more drama, more headlines, and still no real progress. And in an era when people are desperate for tangible results, that might be the very thing that sinks his campaign. The discussion took another twist when they brought up the topic of Joe Biden's preemptive pardons. Toward the end of his presidency, Biden pardoned several people he believed Trump might target, and Schiff was on that list. But here's where it got interesting. Schiff claimed he was against the pardons altogether, insisting he'd been vocal about it at the time. That denial didn't wash away the skepticism. The critics saw it as part of the same political game, where public statements and private benefits don't always line up. And then came the curveball. Whispers out of Washington suggesting some of those pardons might not have even been signed by Biden himself. If true, it would open a whole new can of political chaos. What would that mean for their legitimacy? They pushed the idea further, imagining a scenario where Schiff might one day count on a pardon, only for it to fall apart because the signature was questionable or forged. The implication was clear: if Schiff had really abused his position for personal or political gain, no backroom deal or mysterious paperwork should shield him from accountability. This wasn't just a jab at Schiff's ethics, it was a reminder that in a country built on the principle that no one is above the law, the rules shouldn't change just because someone has powerful friends. And if those rules finally caught up to Schiff, his carefully managed career could collapse overnight. Then came a moment that perfectly captured why his critics believe Schiff's moral compass only spins when it benefits him. The topic shifted to a case involving a judge who was arrested for helping an illegal immigrant avoid ICE. It was a serious legal matter, one that sparked outrage in many political circles. But when Schiff was asked about it, he seemed to suddenly forget how to take a strong position. He brushed it off with vague, non-committal answers, claiming he didn't know enough to comment despite the fact that it had been widely reported. To the commentators, this wasn't ignorance. It was avoidance. They argued that if the story had even brushed against the topic of Russia, Schiff would have been in front of cameras before sunrise, delivering dramatic speeches and waving stacks of evidence. The contrast was glaring. When it came to narratives that served his political brand, Schiff was tireless, relentless, and always ready with a soundbite. But when faced with a legitimate legal issue that didn't fit his agenda, he became quiet, cautious, and invisible. That, they said, was the Schiff problem in a nutshell. Outrage on demand, silence when it's inconvenient. And the more they laid it out, the more it looked like a pattern, one that voters would have to decide whether they wanted to reward with a Senate seat. Before that final censure blow landed in the public's mind, the critics took time to strip Schiff's career down even further, this time focusing on how he managed to stay politically afloat despite such a shaky foundation. They described him as a master of keeping the spotlight on himself, even when there was nothing substantial to show for it. They pointed to his years on the House Intelligence Committee as the perfect example. The position was supposed to be about safeguarding national security, handling sensitive information, and making decisions that protected the country. But instead, they argued, Schiff turned it into his personal stage. He wasn't in the business of quiet, behind-the-scenes problem-solving. He was in the business of creating high-drama moments that the media could sink its teeth into. They recalled the constant press appearances, the dramatic language about bombshell evidence, and the endless promises that the next hearing or the next report would finally reveal the truth about Trump and Russia. And yet, after years of buildup, nothing ever materialized. No definitive proof, no smoking gun, just a slow fade into silence when the narrative collapsed. In their view, this wasn't a fluke, it was a strategy. Schiff had mastered the art of keeping public attention without ever delivering a real resolution. And while it worked for years, they argued it also came at a cost. Every time he doubled down on the collusion storyline without solid evidence, it chipped away at public trust, not just in him, but in the political system as a whole. Then came the bigger question. If Schiff could hold such a powerful position for so long without achieving anything concrete, what would stop him from doing the exact same thing in the Senate? California voters, they warned, could end up sending a man to Washington whose top skill wasn't governance, but performance. They even touched on the financial side, not in personal gain, but in taxpayer dollars. The endless investigations, hearings, and media blitzes cost the public tens of millions of dollars, all while producing nothing of substance. That money, they argued, could have gone to healthcare programs, infrastructure, or education, but instead it was burned on political theater. By the time they were done, Schiff's career was painted as a cautionary tale, a politician who thrived on drama, drained resources, and left behind little more than headlines. And with his Senate run looming, they made it clear the stakes weren't just about one seat, but about whether voters were willing to keep rewarding style over substance. The final blows came when they reminded everyone that Schiff had already faced a rare and humiliating punishment in Congress, being formally censured. Only 26 members in all of U.S. history had ever been censured, and Schiff was now one of them. This wasn't for some small procedural slip-up. It was for promoting what they called the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, pushing it for years without solid evidence. They painted the censure not as a political stunt, but as a clear statement that his conduct had crossed a line. And while his defenders downplayed it, the critics insisted it was a warning sign about his judgment and priorities. They contrasted what America needs: steady, principled leaders who focus on real solutions with what they claimed Schiff offers: a constant stream of headlines, investigations, and partisan spectacle. They questioned what he truly brought to the table for Democrats, noting the absence of landmark legislation, concrete economic plans, or major accomplishments in national security. In their telling, Schiff's career was a montage of press events and political theater, designed to keep him in the spotlight rather than move the country forward. And with that, the message was clear. Voters could either demand leaders who deliver results or settle for a rerun of The Adam Schiff Show. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.